Food spoilage was not an abstract concern in 1940s homes. It was a daily, practical problem that demanded discipline, routine, and, well, a deep understanding of how food behaves over time. Refrigeration existed, but it was limited, unreliable, and often reserved for the most perishable items. What made 1940s households effective was not technology, but systems. These homes operated with layered defenses against spoilage, each reinforcing the next. Understanding those systems offers lessons that still apply today, especially for anyone interested in resilience, self-reliance, or long-term food security. Kitchen design and household layout were built around food preservation. 1940s kitchens were not designed for convenience. They were designed for control. Pantries were placed on exterior walls where temperatures stayed cooler year-round. Windows were positioned to allow airflow without direct sunlight. Cabinets were deep, dark, and enclosed, limiting exposure to heat and humidity. Many homes included a cold cupboard, sometimes vented to the outside, used specifically for dairy, leftovers, and cooked foods that needed to cool slowly. This layout alone reduced spoilage by stabilizing temperature and light exposure. A modern homeowner can apply this by designating a consistently cool, dark cabinet for shelf-stable foods and by keeping heat-producing appliances away from storage areas. Root cellars and ground-level cooling spaces did most of the heavy lifting. The root cellar was the backbone of 1940s food storage. Dug partially or fully underground, these spaces maintained temperatures between 35 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity. Potatoes, carrots, apples, beets, and cabbage could last for months without refrigeration. Proper separation mattered. Apples were stored away from vegetables because the ethylene gas they released accelerated spoilage. Vegetables were packed in sand, sawdust, or straw to regulate moisture. Today, even without a true cellar, this knowledge can be applied by using insulated basement corners, buried storage bins, or temperature-controlled containers for produce that spoils quickly in modern kitchens. Daily food rotation and strict inventory habits prevented waste. Nothing sat untouched in a 1940s home. Every item had a place, and every place was checked regularly. Housewives rotated jars, wrapped leftovers carefully, and tracked what needed to be eaten first. Leftovers were not optional meals, they were scheduled meals. Bread was refreshed, not discarded. Milk was boiled if it was nearing spoilage and reused for cooking. This constant attention reduced waste dramatically. Applying this today means keeping a visible food rotation system, placing older items at the front, and treating leftovers as planned resources rather than afterthoughts. Well, canning was a controlled science, not just a hobby. Back in the 1940s, home canning followed precise rules that were passed down through experience, not just guesswork. Folks used pressure canners for meats and low-acid vegetables, while water baths were reserved for fruits and preserves. Every jar was inspected for seal integrity daily during that first week. Any sign of failure meant you had to toss it out right away. Storage was always dark, cool, and dry, and jars were never stacked directly on top of each other. Labels always included dates and contents, no exceptions. Modern survivalists can really benefit from this discipline by following tested canning standards to the letter and by storing preserved foods under controlled conditions, instead of just treating them like decorative pantry items. Salt, sugar, and fat, these were deliberate preservation tools. Folks didn't rely on refrigeration alone. Meat was cured with salt and sometimes smoked too. Jams and jellies used sugar, not just for sweetness, but mainly for microbial control. Rendered fats were used to seal cooked meats and pâtés from air exposure. These methods, they extended shelf life while keeping nutrition intact. For folks today, this means using salt curing for small batches of meat, storing fats properly to keep them from going rancid, and really understanding why those old recipes were put together the way they were. Ventilation and airflow mattered just as much as cold temperatures. Homes in the 1940s put a big emphasis on airflow to manage moisture, which honestly is often a bigger enemy than heat. Screens let windows stay open without bringing in pests. Food storage areas were never sealed airtight unless you were intentionally preserving something. Bread boxes allowed air to circulate, keeping mold at bay while also limiting drying out. Cheese was wrapped in waxed paper, not plastic, so it could breathe. Bringing this into today's world means, well, reconsidering plastic storage for certain foods and realizing that some spoilage is caused by trapped moisture, not just exposure. Ice boxes and early refrigerators, well, they were managed carefully. When refrigerators first became common, folks treated them as limited tools, not just catch-all solutions for every bit of food. Ice boxes needed daily drainage and cleaning, no exceptions. Where you put your food mattered too, since temperatures varied a lot inside. Raw meat always stayed down low, dairy was kept central, and leftovers were wrapped up tight to keep things from cross-contaminating. Refrigerators had to be defrosted on a regular basis to keep them running efficiently. And, modern users can learn from this by figuring out the temperature zones in their own refrigerators and steering clear of overcrowding, since that really does cut down on cooling efficiency. Community knowledge and shared standards, they really did reinforce good practice. Food preservation wasn't private knowledge back then. Neighbors would compare methods, share warnings, and weren't shy about correcting mistakes. Unsafe practices got dropped quick because, well, the consequences were immediate and plain to see. This kind of communal accountability kept standards high. These days, you can apply that by sticking to proven sources, sharing tried and true methods, and steering clear of shortcuts that don't have any evidence behind them. Food spoilage prevention in the 1940s, it wasn't about nostalgia. It was about precision, respect for the food, and a real understanding of environment and time. These homes worked well because the systems folks used were intentional, layered, and always actively maintained. When you put these principles into practice today, they still help reduce waste, boost resilience, and deepen our understanding of how households managed under pressure. If this deep dive added value to your understanding of everyday history, go ahead and subscribe to Wisdom for the Journey. Share this with someone who appreciates practical historical knowledge and help keep these lessons alive for the next generation of serious learners.